gentlemen, my name is Zhengyu He, and my supervisors are Professor Zhengyu He and Professor Ernest Kukler from Materials Department, and Professor Sennan Zhang and Dr. Zheng Yu He from Engineering Department. And today my topic is entering the 3D world. So before 2002, apart from three-dimensional materials, people have successfully synthesized a lot of low-dimensional materials. Let's take carbon-based material as an example. Apart from graphite, we've got carbon nanotubes, which is a one-dimensional material, and foolery, which is a zero-dimensional material. But people never found any two-dimensional material, so people want to fill in this gap. So from 2002, there are actually two groups start to think about this problem. If it's possible to fabricate any two-dimensional carbon-based materials, and one group is in Manchester University, led by Professor Sir Andrew Guy. Their method is to use the Scotch tape to isolate two-dimensional carbon-based material from a piece of graphite. And the second group is based in Columbia University, and their method is to use a very specially designed pencil and to write very, very gently on the surface of silicon and trying to get these two-dimensional materials. And they're actually competing with each other at the time, and the result is, so the Scotch tape wins, and they been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2010, and they named this 2D carbon-based material as graphene. So what is graphene? To understand graphene, let's first go back to its bulk form, graphite. So if we magnify graphite for 1 million times, we can see graphite is actually a layer structure materials, and each layer we call graphene. So in one sentence, the very simple definition of graphene is the single atomic layer of graphite. And in this picture, I show the Scotch tape, which people have been used to isolate graphene. And if we put it into the optical microscope, we can see that this very tiny area with lightest optical contrast is called graphene. So graphene is a wonderful material. So many good properties. For example, it's very light and it's very strong. So people believe that graphene can help us make lighter but stronger aeroplanes. And graphene has a very large surface area. So even a very small amount of chemicals attached to graphene can modify its conductivity. So graphene can help us make different types of sensors with ultra-high sensitivity. And graphene is a highly flexible, highly transparent, and highly conductive material. So it can be used as a transparent conductive electrode to make flexible electronics. And fourthly, graphene is very sensitive to light. So we can use graphene to make ultra-sensitive photodetectors and CCDs. And I think the biggest advantage of graphene is that the electrons in graphene can move much, much faster than in any materials we've found. So people believe that we can use graphene to make ultra-fast speed CPUs, which can boost our computing abilities. But to realize this goal, we need to dope graphene, which means we need to introduce foreign atoms into graphene to replace some of the carbon atoms with ultra-high spatial resolution. But the present doping technique cannot achieve. So in our group, we decided to push this technology forward to its limit, which means we want to reach the single atom resolution doping of graphene. And our technique can be divided into two steps. The first step is called punching process, where we will remove just single carbon atoms from graphene. And the second step is called doping step, which we will introduce foreign atoms into graphene. And the facilities we are using here is this one, called transmission electron microscope. So abbreviated as a TEM. So a TEM is very similar to optical microscope, but with much, much higher magnification. So in its normal imaging mode, we are able to, it allows us to see each of these carbon atoms on graphene, as you can see in these pictures. And each bright spot here represents the carbon atoms. And if we want to do the punching process, we then need to focus this electron beam. And since we're talking about single atom resolution, So the parameters of the electron beam needs to be very, very carefully chosen, or we can, it's very easy to damage the whole graphene sheet, and after we destroyed maybe nearly 100 graphene sheet, and now we've reached this single atom resolution. As you can see here in this TMA picture, there's only one carbon atom has been removed from the graphene lattice. And the second step is the doping step. So in this step, we just drop casting some foreign atoms, and in this case is iron atoms onto the graphene sheet. And if there's any defects on graphene, these iron atoms can only move very, very fast on the surface of graphene. But after that punching process, we will create a vacancy, and that vacancy will act as a trap center, which can attract the nearest iron atoms into that hole, to fill in that hole, and also so that it can, these iron atoms can form a three very stable bondings with the surrounding carbon atoms. And here is the TM image of a single iron atom doped graphene, and each bright spot here and here represents the iron atoms, and they have two different structures. And in some cases, where we may need to introduce more than one iron atoms into the graphene lattice. So I've developed this technique a little bit further so that we can introduce any amount of iron atoms into the graphene lattice with a very controllable way. So here, in this set of TM images, shows the two iron atoms doped graphene. And we've also performed some theoretical calculations about to get the properties of this iron doped graphene. And what we found is quite encouraging, because this iron doped graphene has a very special magnetic properties, while the pristine graphene does not have. So we believe we can use this iron doped graphene as a building block to build the next generation hard disk, which can greatly enhance our data storage capacity. But although graphene has so many great properties, but it is not a perfect material. And there are actually two main problems in the graphene research area. The first problem is the production difficulty. In the past 10 years, although people have developed a lot of methods to enable us to grow very large area graphene, but we still cannot avoid here contamination. Here is a multi-layer region, and the cracks and the holes on graphene. And all of these defects can greatly degrade the electrical performance of graphene. So we still need to find out a new method to grow large area, but with perfect lattice, without any defects graphene. And so this is the first problem, which is an extrinsic one. And the second problem is actually an intrinsic one. So if we want to use a material to replace the silicon inside the CPU, one prerequisite is that this material should have big enough band gap, so that the CPU can work properly. And the band gap is as an intrinsic material's properties, but the graphene has a zero band gap, which means if we use graphene to make conventional CPU, it will lead to a lot of malfunctions. Although scientists have tried a lot of methods to open up this band gap, but very few of them have succeeded. So now more and more scientists believe that graphene may not be an ideal alternative to silicon, to replace silicon inside the CPU. To solve this problem, scientists have fabricated another category of two-dimensional materials, which is called monolayer transition metal dihydrogenide, because they have a proper band gap. And also, if you look at the bulk form of these TMD materials, they are very like graphite. They are layer structured, which means we can use the similar Scotch tape method to isolate monolayer from the bulk form. And the TMD material actually have a lot of family members, and among all these family members, 4 of them are the most widely investigated material, which are tungsten diselenide, molybdenum diselenide, molybdenum disulfide, and tungsten disulfide. So in our group, we are very interested in tungsten disulfide. So I will use tungsten disulfide as an example to illustrate what is called TNT. What is TNT material? So let's first look at its atomic structure. So tungsten disulfide, if we look at it from its top view, it is actually very similar to graphene. So all the atoms are arranged in hexagonal lattice. But if we look at it from the side view, like here, it's a bit different because graphene has only a single atomic layer, but tungsten disulfide have three atomic layers with one layer of tungsten atoms sandwiched by 2 layers of sulfur atoms. And here is the optical image of a monolayer single crystal tungsten disulfide. It is produced by our group, and it has a very nice and sharp triangle shape with a size about 150 microns. And actually, it is the biggest monolayer single crystal in the world, and we have kept this world record for almost 1 year. And here's the TM image of a tungsten disulfide. And tungsten disulfide has also a very unique optical properties, which is if you shine a green laser onto the tungsten disulfide, instead of reflecting a green light, it will actually emit a red light, as you can see here. So, and we call this physical phenomenon as photoluminescence, which and because this tungsten disulfide has this kind of photoluminescence properties, so it is a very good light absorber and also a very good light emitter. So based on these good properties of tungsten disulfide and the TMT materials, so we can use these TMT materials to make a lot of applications. For example, we can use them to make flexible CPU. We can, because they are good light absorber and light emitter, so we can use them to make flexible solar cell and also flexible light emitting device. And if we combine these 3 applications together, it will give us very fancy and new type next generation electronic devices, which is called wearable electronics. So, just imagine if one day scientists and engineers can have the ability to incorporate ultra-flexible self-powered computer into the sleeves of your shirt. That'd be really amazing, and that can totally revolutionize the way people are using the electronic devices. And several companies have made a prediction about the market value of wearable devices, and they thought in 2018 the market value of wearable electronic devices can exceed $12 billion US. So it's really a gigantic and attractive market in front of us. So apart from the wearable electronics, the TMT materials can also be made into a new type computing device, which is called electronic photonic hybrid devices. So this kind of hybrid devices is very similar to conventional electronic devices, but we need to replace some of the electrical components with optical components so that we can use photons, that is light, instead of electrons, that is current, to process and transmit data, which can offer us much faster computers. And people believe that if we use these kind of hybrid devices into our computer, it can make the computer at least 100 times faster than the computers we have now. And a lot of people believe that these kind of devices will be the trend, and including the former Intel senior vice president Pat Gelsinger. And he said, and I quote it here, so today optics is a niche technology, and tomorrow it is the mainstream of every chip that we build. But in order to, if we want the materials to be used into these hybrid devices, one prerequisite is that we need to use we need to be able to use the electrical method to control its optical properties. And based on this motivation, I started my second project, in which I aim to use this electrical method to control the photoluminescence of a tungsten disulfide. And in this picture, it shows the experimental setup of my experimental setup. And I use two very sharp metal tips as electrodes. And what I want to do is I want to monitor the photoluminescence response as I apply the voltage across the domain. And the results are quite encouraging, as you can see from this animation. So if I increase the voltage across this electrode, the red light becomes dimmer and dimmer. And if I sweep this voltage back to zero, the red light can go back to its normal intensity. And which means we can use this tungsten disulfide and using these simple structures to make a very basic electronic photonic logic transistors. So if we apply zero voltage, where the red light is quite intense, then it represents state 1. And if we apply high voltage, the red light is very dim, and it can represent the zero state. And also, since this is the first time that people have used this kind of electrical method to manipulate the photoluminescence of the 3D materials, so my supervisor and I has also developed a new theory to explain the mechanism of this phenomenon, but I won't mention this theory here. It's very boring. So apart from graphene and apart from the TMD materials, there are now more and more two-dimensional materials emerging. So, for example, we have black phosphorus, we have boron nitride, which is a monolayer insulator. We also got silicon, which is a monolayer silicon. And all of these two-dimensional materials have fantastic optical, electrical, and mechanical properties, which the three-dimensional materials cannot compare. So I believe that these two-dimensional materials will play a more and more important role in our daily life. And in conclusion, I would like to say, just as the title of my topic, we are now entering the two-dimensional world. Here's the reference page, and the two red lines are the two papers that I've published as first author. And I want to thank Professor Zhengyu He, my supervisor, for his supervision, Dr. Alex Robertson, and Mr. Huang He for their help in the TN project. Mr. Yu Rong, who is here, and he drove the world's largest tungsten disulfide domain, and Mr. Zhengyu He for his help in my second project. I would also like to thank Professor Tian Chuanshan, who is my supervisor in undergraduate university, that is Fudan University. So he gave me a lot of help even when I came here. I really want to thank him. And I also want to thank China Oxford Scholarship Fund and Wolfson Foundation for their generous financial support. And my supervisor, Professor Zhengyu He, is supported by the Royal Society. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much for attention.